Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Prep 1.2. Here we're going to continue to develop some of our Excel skills. So we begin here with an exercise in absolute and relative referencing. So what we here have is multiplication by rows, and you can see here that this is going to go from 1 to 10. So we're going to put in a formula that's going to get us there, which is going to be equal to the one above plus 1. That's a relative reference, so if we copy it down here, then each one repeats the pattern of the previous 1 plus 1. Okay, over here, we're going to put equals that relative reference times this one up here, the 10. The 10 is going to be an absolute reference. On a Mac, that's Command-T. On Windows, that's F4, or on some laptops, Function F4. Or you can just type in the dollar signs. And the reason we want that to be an absolute reference is so that we can copy it down without it moving. Now, I've made that a fully absolute reference. Technically, all I really need is the dollar sign in front of the 4, because it's only the row that I don't want to change. In fact, I'll prove it by taking away that dollar sign. And copy that down. Okay, over here, this is multiplication by columns, so it's going to be equal to this. And again, that's the one that's not going to change, so that becomes an absolute reference. It doesn't have to be fully absolute. In this case, since we're dragging sideways, it's only the column that we want to lock. So if I keep cycling through with Command-T or F4 or Function F4, then I can freeze just the column, just the B, leave the row alone, and then multiply times 1 here, and then drag it across. All right. Now this one really does test your knowledge a little bit more. So first let's continue what we had up here. Equals 1 plus 1, and then drag that down. And then on a multiplication table, it's going to be equal to this one times this one. All right, but that's going to show up as being wrong because we're missing the locks. Now the question is, which locks? Well, here's the way I want you to think about it. The one in blue over here to the left, that's in a column, and we don't want that column to change as we drag to the right, so we're going to lock the B, which is the column. And the one up here, which is the rows, as we drag down, we don't want the row to change for the C21, so we're going to lock just the 21. In this case, I just typed the dollar signs individually because that was easier. Okay, now this one should copy both directions, so it copies both down and then across. And then we get all the points and move on. Okay, now we're going to review index match-match. It's a very important skill for data integration. We have some data over here. We'd like to bring that data into this table, and then we're going to bring that data into this table as well, but in each case just a subset of the data is being brought over. And we use index match-match in order to do that. So up here we'll start with a straight index match-match equals index, and then we highlight the entire table that we're indexing. And that becomes an absolute reference, so that's F4 or Command-T or Function F4, depending on your computer, comma, then you have to scroll up. All right, and then we start our match. So first match is going to match the employee number, which is here, against all the employee numbers over here. That's a range, so it gets locked. 0 because it's a exact match. Then another comma, then match. In this case now the heading, column heading, which is this name, against all the column headings over here, That's a range. So it gets locked, comma 0 for exact match, and then close parentheses twice. Now, we're not quite done, because in the first solitary value in the match command, we lock the first position, which is the column position, so that gets a $sign. And then in the second one that's solitary, the lookup value for the match, we lock the second position, which is the row. Why the column for the first one? Remember, same thing. Depending on which way you drag. If you're dragging this way, you got to lock the column. For the up here, if you're dragging down, you got to lock the row. And then that should fill down. And if we've done it right, it'll fill over as well. Now, for the salary, it didn't come out right because this is formatted as currency with 0 decimal places. When we brought it over, we don't have that. If we actually want to see the message, we can click on that and do the F9 or function F9 on sum. It says currency accounting with 0 decimal places. So we'll pick currency and then take away the decimals, do the F9 thing again, and then drag it down. All right, now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but using a different combination of functions. So this time it's going to be equals index. Sorry, VLOOKUP. That's why it says VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP. All right, and the lookup value is this one. So the syntax is different for VLOOKUP. You start with the lookup value, comma, then where are you going to look it up? It's going to be this table array over here, which is arranged, so we're going to lock it. Okay, comma. Then there's another argument, column index, which means once you find it, which column do you want to return? The value from which column? Well, we want to return the value from the second column, which would be the name column. So for now, I'm going to put in a 2, and then I'm going to change that in a second. So 2, and then range lookup is, do you want it to be exact or not? And we want, here, I'll show you. If you ever get here and go, well, I don't know what to put for range lookup, then just click on the VLOOKUP and it'll tell you what the arguments mean. All right, and you see 1 for true, 0 for false, approximate or exact match. So we want exact match again. So fortunately, Excel is keeping the same convention that 0 gives us an exact match, or we can type the word false. So false on an approximate match, so it becomes an exact match. All right, now the missing lock, that's interesting. All right, so here on the VLOOKUP, what we know we're going to need to do, since we're going to end up dragging this sideways, we're going to need to lock the column here, but that's actually not why it was complaining. Well, actually, maybe it was. All right, and that worked. Now, the problem with that is that as we drag it across, it will always pull the names, right? I mean, this would work for the first column, but it's not going to work for that one. So what we need is something over here. Let me undo that. What we need is that 2 to change as we move across, and that's what we're going to use a match command for. So we put the word match here, just like we did above on the index match. So we're going to match that guy against all the column headings over here, which is a range, so we lock it, comma 0. And one last thing is we need to make sure that as we drag down, that stays on the top row here, stays pointing to the top row, so we're going to lock the row for that single argument. All right, now we should be able to drag across and then down. Then we have to fix the formatting over here. which, as we said before, was currency with 0 decimal places. And copy it down. All right, so 2 ways to do the same thing. It's kind of really interesting. On the VLOOKUP, remember I typed in a 0, replaced it with false, because false and 0 are the same thing to Excel. On match, it didn't do that replacement. It just took the 0. But they're really the same thing. And they both the false and the 0 specify we want exact matches. Okay, next one, today's date. The way that we get that is with a function in Excel called today. Because it's a function, it gets parentheses, even though there's nothing inside the parentheses. And then the current date time. In Excel, that's a function called now, which will give us both the day and the time. So today gives us just the date, and now gives us the date and the time. All right, now we have some functions which are going to look at this date of birth and pull out pieces of it. So if we want the day that the person was born equals day, click on the birthday, and that gives us the day. We could center that to make it pretty. If we want just the month, we type month. Fortunately, these names make sense. And then drag it down and center. And if we want the year, we type, well, you guessed it, year on the date of birth, and then drag it down. And we'll center that too. All right, now if we want the exact age, then what we're going to need to do is take the today, this one, minus the birthday for the person. All right, now, but we have to be careful because this formula is going to be dragged down, and anything that's outside of the table, meaning this guy, has to be locked. So let me go back and lock that. Okay, so that day minus the date of birth. All right, and we're almost there. That's going to give me the age in days, but nobody puts their age in days. So I have to put that all in parentheses and divide it by 365. Parentheses, parentheses, divided by 365. All right, now I've got the exact age, but that was supposed to be only 1 decimal place, so let's take away decimals, force it to regrade with F9, copy it down, and we'll center that. Okay, for full name, that is going to be equal to first name, then an ampersand character, and then we need a space. It says quote, space, quote, then another ampersand. So that's simply going to attach a space to the end of the first name, and then we'll put the last name. There we go. Copy it down, center. And now if we want something a little bit fancier, last name, comma, first initial, this is a little bit harder. So we start out with the last name equals last name, ampersand, then in quotes, comma, space, so there's the comma space between the two, then another quote, then another ampersand, and then the first initial. All right, so how are we going to get just the first initial? Where there's a function in Excel called left. I'll make it uppercase since that sort of lets you know that it's actually a function. And you can see the way left works. You put in the text and the number of characters that you want. So the text is going to be the first name. Number of characters, we just want 1 because we want the first initial. And there we've got it. And then we'll copy that down. And we'll center that too. Okay, on to if statements. So now on these if statements, I'm actually going to these get progressively complex as you go across, and it really becomes hard to figure out what's going on with what. So I'm going to show you a way to do the if statements that makes it a little bit easier to line stuff up. Actually, my view, a lot easier. And it's a trick that programmers have used for years, which is indenting and putting things on different lines. In fact, the unfortunate part of Excel is that it keeps everything on the same line, so it's really hard to figure out what's going on. And I'll show you what I mean. So here, I'm going to start out, and I'm going to put all these examples using this type of indentation. So bachelor's degree encoded binary example. So bachelor's degree no or yes. And the way we're going to do it is if they don't have a bachelor's degree, it's going to be a 0. If they have one, it's a 1 for yes. So we'll say equals if open parentheses. And now I'm going to show you the trick. I could do this on one line, and this wouldn't be easy enough on one line, but it's good to practice on the easy ones for this new technique so that you can use it on the harder ones. So now I'm going to hold down the Option key, or on Windows the Alt key, hit Enter, and then I'm going to space bar in. This is effectively indented underneath, and now I put the condition. The condition is if this equals yes, and the yes has to be in quotes because it's a character string, comma, right? And do you see how this is going along? So we just finished the logical test. Now we do value of true, value of false. So again, Option, Enter, value of true is a 1, comma, Option, Enter, spacebar in, value if false is a 0, Option or Alt, Enter, and then we close the parentheses. So this closing parentheses corresponds to the opening parentheses on the if, and then if I want to see, like, well, did I really line it up right, I can click on the different parts. So that part is logical test, that part is value of true, that part is value of false, so it looks like it'll work, and it does. Copy that down and center. All right, now, didn't really need to do all the indentation on that one. Probably could have done it on a single line without loss of comprehension, but now they start to get harder, and this is where this technique helps. So on this one, this is an if and for this bonus one, and the bonus one says if the employee has greater than 15 years with the company and the salary is less than or equal to $35,000. So we start out again, equals if, open parentheses, Option, Enter. Now we have two conditions, all right? So as soon as, so space over, start an and right away, open parentheses on the and then Option, Enter again, indent even more. Okay, so what are my two conditions? Greater than 15 years with the company. So the years with company is greater than 15, comma, that was logical 1, now we're on logical 2, so Option, Enter again. And the second condition is that the salary here is less than or equal to 35,000. And notice you don't put in the comma in the 35,000 whenever you're using whenever you're hard coding a number in a formula. Don't put any commas or dollar signs or anything like that. Okay, so now the and is done. So Option, Enter. Now we close the parentheses on the and, so go sort of try to line up with the A and then put the closing parentheses, and notice they'll be the same color, right? Red for opening, red for closing. All right, that's done. And then we're going to put a comma because we're just finishing up the logical test. Both of those together constitute a logical test. Put a comma. Now we get value of true. So Option, Enter again. So if all that is true, then they get a bonus 1, which has to be in quotes, comma, and now we're at value of false, Option, Enter. And if it's not true, then they get nothing. So we just put in a null string, which is 2 double quotes right next to each other. Option, enter, and then we close the parentheses for the if. Right, so this closing parentheses closes the if, the and, opening, closing here. And so all of this was all this in here, the and is the logical test. And when we were inside the and, it had 2 logicals that were being tested. This is the value of true. This is the value of false. Let's give it a try, and it seems to work. And we'll center those. All right, now let's go for the if or. Equals if, oops, start with an equal sign. Equals if. And by the way, when you do these, the parentheses must be right next to the name of the function. So that's if parentheses right there. All right, what happens after the parentheses can have spacing though. Okay, so if, in this case, it's if the employee has less than or equal to 5 years or a bachelor's degree. So this is going to be an if or. So there's the if. Now start the or. Option, enter. And now we've got the 2 conditions of the or. So less than or equal to 5 years. So years of company less than or equal to 5, comma. Option, enter. You get used to this. And the second condition was or bachelor's degree. So or bachelor's degree equals yes. Option, enter. Now those are the 2 conditions for the or. The or is done, so I can close that parentheses. That's the red one, closing there. All right, and then I put a comma. Now we're on to value if true. So option, enter. The value if true is going to be bonus 2, comma, option, enter. And the value of false is no bonus, or just null string. So double quote, option, enter, and close the parentheses here on the left-hand margin. Okay, let's give that a try. And that looks good. All right, now it starts to, these next 2 start, for these first 3, you probably could have done it without the parentheses or, the special technique that I showed you. But with these last 2, it would be really hard. So let me show you what I mean. Equals if, so the bonus 3 is a rating of 9 or greater than 20 years of the company, or a rating of 8 and greater than 30 years. Right, so it's an or, and each branch of the or has an and in it. So there's the if, or, and each branch of the or. Here comes the first branch of the or, which is an and. All right, so now we're doing the first and. The first and is a rating of 9 or greater. Rating 9 and greater than 20 years of the company. So rating equals 9, comma, and greater than 20 years. So years of company is greater than 20. Option, enter. Now we close the and, we're done with it. So make sure that this parentheses, this closing parentheses, lines up with the a and, which it does. All right, then a comma, option, enter. And then we start the second and. Oops. Second and. So the second and is and, open parentheses. And this one says rating of 8. So rating equals 8. And the second condition of this and is greater than 30 years. So years of company greater than 30. This one's getting kind of long. and then close that and, right? And as soon as I closed that and, then it went back to the or. So now I'm putting a comma. No, I need to close the or. So we're done with all the ands, so I'm going to close the or. Good. Now the or is closed, and now we're back to all of this was just the logical test part of this if. Now I put a comma, option enter, and now I can hit value of true, which is the bonus 3, comma, option enter, and the value of false is just the double quote, option enter, and then we close the parentheses for the if. So there's a lot to that one. So there's the if, the or has 2 branches, an and branch, which also has 2 things in it, and a second and branch, which has 2 things in it. And if either one of those and branches is true, then the whole or will be true, and they'll get bonus 3. Otherwise, no bonus 3. And then we'll center that. All right. Now this next one, even harder. So, equals if, option enter, they all seem to start with if. Okay, so now we're coming up with the pay raise. And the pay raise is going to be dependent upon whether or not they got one of the 3 bonuses. And notice nobody got, you can't get more than 1 bonus. You get one of the 3 bonuses, or the pay raise is primarily determined by your rating. So we're going to start with the rating, and this time it's a little curious. I said equals if, but the truth of the matter is I'm going to back up. This time around we want another function called ifs, equals ifs, because there's lots of logical tests. So option enter, and you'll see how this works. Okay, so we're going to start with the rating equals 9. So if this rating is equal to 9, and because the 9's outside of the table, it needs to be locked, comma, then they get a 4% raise, which also needs to be locked because it's outside the table, comma. You're going to start to see where the real payoff is here. Option enter. Okay, so we're starting to start with 9. We're working our way down, 9, 8, 7, and the rest. All right, if that's not true, then we're going to test the same rating and see if it's equal to 8. Lock it, and if it is, you see how we're getting like a really nice pattern here? Option enter, and then the same thing, rating equal to 7, and then it's 2%, comma. This is really cool. And more importantly, it's clean, right? You can actually see what's going on. Rating equals 6. Then it's this one, comma. Right, now, if it's none of those, 0 to 5, they get 0. So we actually have to put that last condition. Option enter. And so the way that we put that last condition for the sake of being complete was we say, look, if anything else, and the everything else is just the word true. Meaning if we get through all of these, then we want the if none of these conditions hit, then we want the last condition to be true. So we just say true. So if it's true, then they get this one. Okay. And then option enter. Right. And that takes care of that ifs, right? But Now they could also get a bonus. It's crazy, right? So we got to account for that. So option enter plus ifs. So we start another ifs. I mean, this is a really big one. And the first one is if this row is equal to bonus 1, which gets locked, comma, then they get that bonus 1, which is also locked, comma, option enter, and if this one is equal to bonus 2, which is locked, comma, then they get that one. It's also locked. Option enter, and you guessed it. Now we go for this one equals bonus 3. Option enter, comma, then they get this bonus 3. Right, so they could get a bonus, a regular pay raise plus a bonus if they hit one of these. Then another comma, and you should always, when you're doing this ifs command, make sure that if nothing hits, you specify what's supposed to happen if nothing hits. So your last condition, if need be, is going to be true, and if it's true, then they get 0, right? Meaning if they didn't get any of the bonuses, then they should get 0. So we make sure that we were adding a 0 if they didn't hit a bonus. Option enter. Wow, okay. And then we'll close that parentheses for that ifs, right? And actually, I'll close it on the left margin there. Let's see what happens. Okay, well, we got the right number, just wrong format. So percent with 1 decimal place. So we hit, let me go back to it, hit the percent, hit the 1 decimal place, and force it to regrade. Copy it down, and center. All right, and just taking a look at it one more time. So here's the first if for their regular pay raise. I mean, this one is really, really nasty. Imagine all this on one line. And then the second ifs for to check to see if they get one of the bonuses. Then you can add them together, the regular pay raise plus the bonus. This would be really hard to do on one line. So that's why I showed you this technique early here, so that you'd have it for getting to these tough ones. All right, and then their new salary is going to be equal to their old salary plus the old salary times the pay raise. And we want that currency accounting with 0 decimal places, so let's take away the decimal, regrade, copy it down, and center. All right, now I had left this space here because of those big functions in the first row, but you can skinny it up by just grabbing the divider. That'll end up looking better. Okay, that was a big one. Shipping cost. All right, so we've got number of items to ship and cost to ship each item. And so what we want to do is multiply those together and then add them all up. So from Athens to Chicago, we want to ship 16 items. Each item will be $34. So we need to add those up. So that equals the 16 times the 34 there, plus the 28 times that one, plus that times that, plus that, this is looking tedious, it's because it is. That, I'm going to show you a faster way in a second, times that plus that times that plus that times that plus that times that. Okay. Now, the faster way is to use what's called the Sumproduct function. So I click here, equals Sumproduct, open parentheses, and the first array is this one, comma, and the second array is this one, close the parentheses, done. All right, though this one needed to be formatted differently. So this one gets formatted with 0 decimal places. So, right, no currency accounting. Oh, sorry, it just needs the currency accounting. So we'll do that here, currency, and then regrade. All right, over here we're going to do exactly the same thing, but the difference is that the second table is transposed, meaning that the rows become the columns, which makes it more difficult, right? So if we were going to do it manually, it would be Athens, Chicago times Athens, Chicago plus Athens, St. Louis times Athens, St. Louis plus Athens, Atlanta times Athens, Atlanta plus Athens, Texas times Athens, Texas plus Parkersburg, Chicago times Parkersburg, Chicago plus, it's really monotonous, Parkersburg, St. Louis times Parkersburg, St. Louis plus Parkersburg, Atlanta times Parkersburg, Atlanta plus Parkersburg, Dallas times Parkersburg, Dallas. Okay, don't want to do that again. Okay, now we're going to use the Sumproduct. So I put equals Sumproduct, get the first array, comma, but I can't just throw in the second array because it's in the wrong order, right? The rows are the columns. So they have to be transposed. So I'm going to put transpose, then the second array, close that parentheses, and then close the parentheses on the Sumproduct, and hit enter. And then I get the answer, but it needs to be currency accounting. And force a regrade, so F9. And there we go. Okay, well, congratulations on finishing Prep 1-2.